I figured. Eric did that from his.
Yeah.
Eric, you can come back.
Michael could.
We didn't start the meeting yet. We were waiting for you. I didn't hit that.
Everybody. Yeah. Otherwise, it's got that. I didn't want to, I didn't.
We only have one visitor.
Yeah. Update the time. Oh, yeah. Write it down, and do it from an app. And I said, you just call me in the morning here, so. Yeah, you should, because your priorities are real screwed up. Not that water. Need to make adjustments. Except.
Okay,
Okay,
let's just get started.
okay, then we'll just start.
So it's,
So it must be locked.
so it's 7:05, we call the meeting to order. The first order of business is to stand and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is public speak, and Kim, I think you're maybe the only person of the public here.
She's not.
on the board of
Finance.
She's on Board of Finance, okay? So we got-
Yeah, I'm actually attending as a Board of Finance member via Zoom. Thank you.
Yep. So I guess that was the next thing that I was gonna suggest we do, is we just go around the room, and if everybody would just say their name and what board they're on, that might be helpful, so. Start with you.
Louise Goodwin, Board of Finance. Liz Lokach, Board of Finance.
Eric Becker, Board of Education.
Bill Rogers, Board of Finance.
Celeste Willard, Board of Education.
Joanne Heber, Board of Finance.
Kate Greenhouse, Board of Ed.
Jim Larson, Planning and Zoning, but for tonight, it'll be moderator of the meeting.
Shannon Loudon, Board of Ed.
Jerry Cremay, Board of Education.
Ann Cremay, Board of Selectmen.
Jeff McGuire, Board of Selectmen.
Scott Person, Board of Selectmen.
Okay, and Eric and Valerie, don't you want to come over here and be part of the team, or?
I was thinking at the table.
Well, thanks.
We will come over if you need us to at that point.
Do you-
Okay,
Can you guys introduce yourselves also? Yeah.
Taylor Parker, Principal, Andover. Terry Smith, Finance Director for Andover Elementary School. Now, who else? Superintendent of School.
Eric, stay quiet.
Eric Anderson, Town Administrator. Thank you. So moving on to the next item here would be changes or additions to the agenda. Does anybody have any changes or additions that they would like to present? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the Andover Elementary School Capital Improvement Fund Usage Protocol, discussion and possible actions. And I don't know who should lead off on that, but Shannon, I know you were trying to work with, I think, Robert.
Yeah.
And from the last meeting, and maybe you can just give an update on how that went and where we stand.
Okay, so we drafted a policy, the Board of Education passed it, this past June, I think.
It then went in front of the Board of Finance. They liked the policy but wanted input from the town attorney, Dennis O'Brien. It then went in front of the Board of Selectmen. And now we're kind of at an impasse. We don't have a policy that's been passed. And at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, to the Board of Finance, I suggested that if we can't pass a tri-board policy, that we might consider using the mechanism that already existed in the past for our 2% non-lapsing account for the new capital fund that's been created for the school or the Board of Education. And that would be basically an agreement between, I guess, the Board of Education and the Board of Finance. That would say that the Board of Education has to ask permission from the Board of Finance to deposit money into that account. And we would ask permission to take it out. As the financial representative of the town and the Board of Education, that seems to make sense to me. If we can't do it otherwise.
Well, that sounds kind of reasonable. I'm sure, is there anybody who would like to address what they saw as concerns on the draft that
So-
Robert and Shannon?
I don't know if you want to speak to that or not, but we haven't seen, I haven't seen what came back from the attorney. So I haven't seen that yet, so I don't really have any input. I don't think the other Board of Finance members have or not.
My concern was that I know that we had been talking about it for a long time and it was decided that we would come up with a policy. So Rob and Shannon had put a lot of time into drafting like this one-page thing that all of, just for a little history. And then I know it made its way, up into the Board of Selectmen meeting. And then I was listening and then I don't have that. I was looking for it quickly today to try to print the differences. So I don't know, Jeff, do you remember like what?
I can comment real quickly. So Dennis, didn't offer advice on it. He changed it,
He had.
significantly.
Oh, okay.
So he cut it down from like a two person per board
Mhm.
membership to one person per board.
Oh.
And put on that it would be the chair of each board, and that wasn't really what was intended. It was
Mhm.
intended to be a committee, like anything would be a committee.
Mhm.
So Dennis made a lot of changes. And didn't just provide advice on the existing policy that had been passed by the Board of Ed.
Mhm.
Do we have, I guess I'm unaware, has that been like presented at another meeting, the changes that he?
It was
made?
presented to the Board of Selectmen.
You guys talked about it, but was there a physical document that?
I
went with
looked
that?
at, it was first
There was.
presented in September, but it got waived to
Yeah.
October, because I was looking through the minutes and trying to refresh them for tonight. And then I think they talked about it in the October meeting, so we're now just at the beginning of December. So it hasn't been that long, so maybe Eric, or maybe they are working on it, if there is going to.
Or not. I mean, I guess the question really is, and I've had this question from the beginning, no one's been able to give me a real answer. What is the problem that this committee is solving that's not getting done currently?
Because what seems to have existed in the past is that, like, the Board of Ed would say they had a capital project and were told at one point in time by the Board of Selectmen that, like, it was a school's thing, we had to figure out how to use the money to get money for it. We're way past that, like, you guys put money into the capital account for the school. I think just to have everyone on the same page that the way that we're asking to use that money and how that money is being used is like, I think it would be great, and you said at the last meeting, like, it should just be between the Board of Finance and the Board of Ed, like, that's how it should be, and that would be great.
Well.
But people have said in the past, like, on the Board of Finance, that they wanted the Board of Selectmen's input. And so now we've gone a year, right, from when we started this process, and what came out of having a tri-board meeting last year was the fact that we wanted to create a policy so that there would be a way to use that money appropriately and everyone was on the same page.
And it was supposed to be a policy between the Board of Education and the Board of Finance, which is why Robert and I were tasked with preparing or drafting the policy.
Well, I think we'd be better off understanding what our three boards handle, like, and just getting the lay of the land and really understanding what's up. Because I don't think we have the right understanding of what we're all responsible for. So the Board of Finance obviously has responsibility for the funding, making sure that everything that goes through in a budget gets approved and is spent. That's your narrow focus, but it's very important in what happens. We have three basic segments within our town. We have the town budget, the AES budget, and we have the RAM budget. The RAM budget is 4.2 million in the ballpark. The AES budget is $4.2 million, or not ballpark, and the town budget is $4.2 million less. We're all real even, but understanding the town budget, which the Board of Selectmen is responsible for presenting to the Board of Finance for approval. We have a $2.5 million operating budget and a $1.5 million capital budget. That capital budget is used for the benefit of the entire town, right? It's used for public works, it's used for the fire department, it's used for the school, right? That's what we currently have, okay? We have a process within place. This is why I've gotten, I've never gotten a straight answer. I've never understood, but we have CIP that is a board that consists of members of all of the different groups, Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, Board of Education, right? That is supposed to go to that group and sit there and say, here are our plans.
But the Board of Education is exempt from.
No,
that.
it is not. Let's now talk about what it is. You are exempt from that process for operational expenses. This building that we currently sit in is not a Board of Education building. It's a town asset. It's part of the capital. No one else in their budget has a capital line except the town. That's it. Does the Board of Education have a capital line in their budget?
We would like to.
We don't.
But we do not.
You don't. That's because state law sits there and says that the town owns the assets inside this building. Board of Education, total control. How you educate children, total control. The Board of Selectmen has never, since I've been on the board, ever come back to the Board of Selectmen and told you how to spend your money within the school. Ever. And that's not our purview, not what we do, not what we have control over. We are, the Board of Selectmen, is the overarching, trying to protect all the interests of all the people within the community, including the children. Right? So I just ask, I'm really, it's a frustrating to me that a policy, and I've said this, Caitlin, I said, why did you not come to the Board of Selectmen and have a discussion, a common sense discussion over what our roles are and how we work together? Because I'll also come back to it, not once since I've been on the Board of Selectmen, have we ever sat there and flat out rejected a legitimate request from the school on any project.
Yes, you
The
do.
only,
Yes.
wait. You attempted to pave a driveway. This is where you have to go back to your attorney from the last tri-board meeting. And understand what the priorities, what capital means and doesn't mean. Right? You are gonna pave a driveway without going to JED and planning and zoning. You are gonna go pave a driveway without going to public works, the people in our town, our community, the people we pay, the town, the whole town pays. To sit there and pave roads and do road work. You are gonna bypass everybody because this board, the Board of Education, believes that it controls and it owns the physical structures that these children get educated in. That is not the case. Right? We all need to work together. Your attorney said it better than I could have ever said it. He said it, but no one seems to want to listen to what your attorney said.
What is your plan for how we work together on capital projects?
Here, give us a 5-year plan, just like every other group within this community does. You guys are in control of what you want to spend on it. We as a group have to determine if we can fund it. The Board of Finance has to tell us we don't have money. I mean, everybody's got to give a little, but you come with a plan that sits there and says, hey, I know you guys need to spend money on a bathroom, right? We've either got to put money away for the bathroom, or we've got to sit there and go to the taxpayer and say, we need some more money to do these bathrooms. It's that important. I'll sit there and do it with you if that's what's really important. The Board of Finance will sit there and say, yeah, maybe not. I don't want to do that. But that's how we work together. That's how we've always done this before we've gotten into this whole. I own the building and we do whatever we want. That's not reality. It's never gonna fly. I'm telling you, it's never gonna fly. We either all come together at like the last meeting. I hope the last tri-board meeting was a very nice cordial meeting, collegial, we could figure out how to work together. I remember getting read a riot act that we did something wrong and when, you know, the Board of Selectmen was at fault for multiple things. Didn't start off well.
That was not my
I know,
intention
I
and
get
I
it,
was not
I
a
get
part
it.
of.
I actually wanted this meeting to come to this meeting and just have drinks with everybody and get to know who you are, so that when we have to talk to each other, it's an acceptable communication and we're all working together. But before we get there, the Board of Education primarily has to understand what is capital and who is responsible for it. You guys are responsible for providing the plan as to what you need. And then the Board of Selectmen sits there and goes to the Board of Finance and presents what it feels it can get done. And if the Board of Finance doesn't like our recommendations, and you go to them and you tell them, we really need the money, and they say they can figure out how to fund it, it's on the Board of Finance. That's their job, not
So
ours.
what you're suggesting, just to summarize and tell me if I'm wrong, is that the Board of Education for capital expenditures should go to the Board of Selectmen and ask permission for you to present. to the Board of Finance.
CIP. If this group, Shannon has been a member for multiple years, I don't understand why we haven't used it. CIP sits there and evaluates what capital projects we have out, sits there and says, hey, we should be spending money on that because that's important.
Does everybody know what
But that-
CIP is?
Yes.
Is it-
Yeah.
Okay,
Capital improvement
Planning.
plan.
Planning, yeah,
Yeah.
plan.
But all the CIP does, Jeff, respectfully, is make recommendations on capital projects that then go for approval to the Board of Selectmen. So what you're suggesting is that the Board of Education has to go to the CIP and eventually has to go to the Board of Selectmen to ask what we're asking to do with the Board of Finance. And I want to get back to, you said you've never turned stuff down.
Yes.
Not true.
Okay, what do we?
July 11th, 2022, you turned down specifically our superintendent's request for a generator. And spent 6 minutes of that meeting, because I recently watched it again, to tell Valerie that you couldn't help her because it's all between the Board of Finance and not the Board of Selectmen. So Valerie then went to the Board of Finance with exactly what we're talking about today. Let's have a policy between the two of us. When we met a year ago, it was very clear that it was supposed to be between the Board of Education and the Board of Finance.
It's not been very clear. You.
It was.
twisted it.
Why were we asked to do the policy?
Listen, the fire department does the exact same stuff. And we fund the fire department to sit there and get their stuff. This is not, I mean, the Public Works is not a separate entity like the AES or the fire department. So, yeah, I want to be clear as to what the organizations are, but everybody comes and does the same things.
But that's the hard part, at least for me and in what I've read, and I think other people should speak as well as the three of us. But the Board of Education is not a department of the town, like the way that works is not exactly the same. When we've had money at the end of a budget and we needed to redo the floors upstairs, like we're able to say, we want to redo the floors upstairs and do it. So
Inside the
also,
building, inside the building, right? Inside the building, not a mechanical structure. Have at it. Like, we're not gonna tell you no. No one's
Let us know for
gonna,
a generator, Jeff.
you know, when Shannon, when
Okay.
you go to that generator, and I'll sit there and I'll go, because that was Adrian's issue related to the generator. There was another reason why that got pushed, because there was funding that was supposed to happen at a different time, and it was chosen not to go in that direction. So and listen, I am going to tell you, if the Board of Education thinks it's gonna get everything that it asks approved exactly when it gets approved, this town is incapable of raising funds in certain ways. So we have to work together. There's no other way. There's nothing else I can lay out for anybody else.
If I could say one thing too,
Yeah.
Jeff, like, I like that you're bringing that to the table, and again, I mean, watching these meetings and being a part of them for the last few years too. It's definitely going to come to some type of trust on everybody's sides to hopefully move it forward. Because I know that a lot of things that have happened in the past still probably hurt deeply or, you know, they dig deep or whatever. I'd like to see us move forward too with some kind of plan, like Caitlin said. And you have said too. I mean, I've been at many meetings when you said that you want to just move forward, but I can understand why the mistrust is there. Just based on everything that keeps being brought up. I'm a type that I like to move forward to after a while, because we keep recycling this. So if Jeff does have an idea, and I know we were planning topics.
Prepare a 5-year capital plan. What things the Board of Education sees coming out in the future that it needs to get addressed. And then we as a community, finance, the selectmen, Board of Education, all need to come together and say, these are the available resources we have. This is what we can do and we can't do. And it's just reality. I mean, I sound, you know, worse than this is, but I'm just telling you, we just need to work together.
So the 5-year plan, is that you want that presented to CIP, or you wanna have another tri-board meeting to present that? Like, how do you see that going
Listen,
forward?
I see you presenting it to CIP and then CIP taking and listing out the things we do. So I know that we asked the fire department for their plan. They give us their plan. Let me tell you, she'll tell you, they give us their plan. And they ask for everything, right? And there's certain things that we sit there and we have sat there in the last 6 years and tried to bank money and fund these funds and try to put away money because we know we cannot hit the town up for all the money needed all in 1 year. So we put money away in funds. It was the same thing that we did with the Board of Education building. We know we have problems coming up. We're not blind. We're not mean people. You know, I'm not mean. I support the school in every possible way that I can, right? So, but it's common sense. And what you're asking, I would sit there and tell you in my head, you're asking for a whole new process to be put in place that doesn't need to be there and it shouldn't be there. And it's just a way to gain control over some other issue. We all have responsibilities, roles and responsibilities. Board of Education's role is to educate the children. Board of Finance role is to take care of our money and make sure that we don't do anything stupid with it. The Board of Selectmen's role is to try to have an overarching view of the community and try to plan and do things that are right for the community long term. That's what I perceive my goal to be and my job.
So I'm just wondering, does the real issue come down to the new capital fund that was created, the non-reoccurring, just to understand how that money can be accessed for
Yes.
projects? I think that's what they're asking for.
If they
in a new
put-
policy,
Listen,
That's
if
outside of all the other
if they
stuff.
put forth what their priorities are. If they sat there and said their priority was the driveway, right, that's $150,000. We might be able to tackle that because we have the money there. If they're telling us the priority is the bathrooms, and that's a $300,000 project, we might have to work with you. We put $100,000 away there. There's some extra more money there. I think, what is the number in that fund?
209.
209, yeah, right?
There's about money there.
Yeah.
So, but we need to put more in. Listen, the school is our biggest physical asset. It's the biggest building in town. It needs, what was it, 7 years ago, we put the roof on this building? $400,000 thereabouts job. It's not like the building's been ignored, but I will tell you, I haven't seen a 5-year plan or any list of any physical projects that would like to get done that lists it out for us to see into the future as to what we need to do. We've had requests for the floor in the gym and the bleachers, and you tried to do the driveway, and I'll sit there and I'll go, yeah, you know, the driveway is a little bit of a problem because everybody's got to play by the rules. Should have went to planning and zoning. Should have sat there and done a lot of things within that process. So yes, we did sit there and say no, because again, it's getting an understanding as a group, what is a capital asset and who has the responsibility for those assets?
And Jeff, I know that in the school district that I work there, you know, we see the capital plan, we see the capital things listed out, you know, when they present their budget or when they have their, but I would like, wouldn't we all like to see like priorities? I mean, we should, if we're gonna
Is-
talk general, we should give.
Is that
maybe
not
some-
what item 6 on the agenda? I thought that was what
It
we
is,
were gonna
yeah.
do tonight, so
Yeah.
I kind of like to,
No, I'm just
What-
talking about the capital plan in general, like
Yep.
it's a document, but then. Am I going above
I
that?
don't-
I just meant.
I don't
since
know,
we're on
but
this
first-
topic.
I think the first thing is the prioritized lists of what we want to do, which
Yeah.
generate the capital plan, and then we figure out how we're gonna fund it.
Well,
Yeah.
and on this agenda, I thought that this is just a light overview, because obviously we're coming
It's a good
together.
start.
Right.
I,
You know,
well, I
kind of-
and I think we keep going in a circle, right? Because, and the end goal is the same, like, right? We all have the same positive end goal in mind.
Mhm.
But like to talk about a protocol for how we use the fund. I wanna know the protocol for how we use it before we continue to fund it. You want the plan of what the things are that we wanna do with it before we continue to fund it.
No, I want to work with you to understand what your priorities are. So when we put your priorities in front of the Board of Finance, they're in the correct order that the Board of Education believes they need to be.
Yeah,
So,
that makes
so
sense.
I would like to go back, you know, one of the things I didn't care for the last time we got together was we ended abruptly and we didn't talk about what it was that we agreed on at the meeting, and I thought we lost some of that. But I did take a couple of notes. And these were the points that I heard the Board of Ed Attorney Rep Tom Mooney provide to us. The Board of Ed in Andover Elementary School are part of the town. They should be working together. The Board of Ed needs a capital expenditure plan. The Board of Ed and the town need to be married to each other with regards to the capital expenditure plan. The town was not asking the Board of Ed for anything that could not be obtained by anyone using a Freedom of Information request. And there was no evidence that the town was trying to tell the Board of Education what to do with their operational budget. So that's what I took away from Tom Mooney at the last meeting. And I thought that if we as a group could agree with just those things, that would help, but I'm not sure
Yeah.
we're there yet.
I think we should, I think we should be there.
I think we should be too.
We have to be there.
It's a question for me. This is the only thing that I sit there and see as a very gray area from the Board of Education standpoint. The building, again, is a physical capital asset of the town, just like the town hall, just like the fire department, just like the library, just like any other building. If you could get past the concept that if you gotta do a roof, you gotta do the roof, the Board of Education isn't gonna fund that roof. It's not part of the budgetary process, it's not part of any, it's a town, which goes back to the Board of Selectmen presenting the budget and giving it to the Board of Finance to sit there and say, approve. In reality, in my mind, very simple common sense thing is, here are the list of things to do. These are the things that we need to sit there and present to the Board of Finance. We may not be able to get that job totally done, but maybe we put away $50,000 or $100,000. And then the Board of Finance gets to see that this is all the money going to these capital plans. Because again, the town's budget is $4 million. $1.5 million is for capital. I'm just saying, it's not anything that anyone should have, like, there shouldn't be a gray area anymore. I honestly, I would like to today, if we could just get past the issue that this building is a town asset. It's gotta be part of the capital plan. The parking lot is part of the capital plan. Everything is part of the capital plan. If you put a book in the building, part of the Board of Education budget, we never mess with.
What about the elevator?
Right.
What about the plumbing? Like, I
Has to,
don't.
has to
where
be,
does that-
elevator plumbing
Yeah.
has to be part of it, has to be part of it, I'm just telling you, has to be part of it.
I think it's
It's
fair
part-
that we
it's
let the
capital
superintendent
expenditure.
say
An
something,
elevator.
then she has to, yeah, can she
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
contribute,
ahead.
she had enough.
So,
Well, you have to come to the table.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
So I think one of the major issues for me in this small town is, and I disagree with a couple of things that you think are very
clearly, black and white, and they're not. If we think about, so my role is superintendent, usually it says superintendent of schools. In this town, we only have one school. So if you look at every other town, there are obviously state statutes and there are town charters. If you look at big cities, small cities, there is, there are lanes. And I know that it's very easy to say everything goes through the Board of Selectmen. Sure, if you want to very clearly say whether it's Andover or let's take Glastonbury, it's a bigger town, you say, are the properties themselves town owned? Sure they are. They're absolutely town owned. No superintendent board of education owns that building. However, there are roles and responsibilities of each board. And it would be silly if any other board in this town thought that they had a role and responsibility to oversee the money. That's clearly, agreed upon by everybody in this room that that's the Board of Finance. But then the role and responsibility gets a little muddy when there's one school involved. So Jeff, you just keep saying that things within the school. The principal runs the day-to-day operations of the building. That is not the Board of Ed's job. That's not my job. If I had 10 schools, 12 schools like Glastonbury, I wouldn't be running day-to-day operations of the school. I'd be running the school district. The oversight of the school district is the superintendent. However, the Board of Education is the town elected board that oversees everything related to 35 School Road. They do. If it's Glastonbury, it is the Board of Education's job to have oversight of every school in Glastonbury. That's the way it is. That is the role. That's the law. That is absolutely in our town charter that says that. That is why there are multiple times where it says excludes the Board of Education, excludes the Board of Education. Now, in the town this size with one school, let's picture lanes, because we say, we like people to be in their lane. If you have one lane road this way, you have one lane road this way, that yellow line in the middle, that's the Board of Finance. Because the Board of Finance has a different lane, but they kind of oversee both of the other lanes because finances are absolutely clear that you guys would oversee everything. You keep saying that we're no different than the fire department, we're no different than the library, we absolutely are. There is no town elected board like the Board of Finance, the Board of Education, and the Board of Selectmen. Please let me finish, Jeff, thank you. Where they oversee just the library, because library is a department of the Board of Selectmen. In most other larger towns, there are, cities, I should say, there are the general fund operational, just like Graham has actually in their regional. And there is another budget, a separate budget that would be a capital budget. So it's usually very clear that, in this particular town, we've never had one. We've been trying to establish one because up until this point, we've used all and every bit of our extra operational funds to do capital related things within the building. Now, in every other town, if it's a Board of Ed, the Board of Education also has subcommittees. And they have subcommittees that are the finance subcommittee, the facilities subcommittee. There are facilities and operations people, not just custodians. There are facilities and operations people in the town Board of Education for Hebron, for the Board of Education for Marlboro, for Ram. They have their own people, but they're under the auspices of the Board of Education, not the town. But what Tom Mooney will say always is, and this is good practice, this is what we've been trying to do, is to get a Board of Finance or Board of Education and a Board of Selectmen to all work together. And the last part that Mooney had mentioned, because that was a little bit of a bone of contention at the time for us with the driveway, was it is true that that money was general fund money. It was operational money. The Board of Education was at that time following everything related not only to the law, because by law, by statute, they oversee the appropriations that are given to them for the general fund. By charter, if they needed an additional appropriation, they would have gone to the Board of Finance, which it was not an additional appropriation. And the charter states very clearly that if it goes to the Board of Finance, as Shannon mentioned, would go to CIP. So we were not violating anything there because we were following not only the general statute of the law, but we were also following the charter. That was money that was the general fund money that, due to grants and things, was there for the Board of Education to continue to do. We have somebody coming out to fix lights in the parking lot. Shannon mentioned earlier that yes, historically, we have gone, not just for the generator, for other things. And that meeting itself, that, she made mention of, the Board of Selectmen did say at that time, as they had for 10 years prior, when things happen, you guys have to figure it out. You're the Board of Education. That's what the Board of Education is here for. I do think that the problem is sometimes it gets a little gray and a little muddy because we have one school. But it does not change the role and responsibility of the Board of Education, of the superintendent, and of the principal. The day-to-day operations of this building, the books, the curriculum, that's not my job or the Board of Education on a day-to-day basis. That's the principal's job, to take care of the day-to-day operations of what goes on in the building. And then when we look at the next step, that's the superintendent's job. And again, whether it's one school or 10 schools, that would be the superintendent's job. Then the Board of Education makes those higher decisions that I think Jeff is saying should go to the Board of Selectmen. They don't go to the Board of Selectmen for approval in other towns. They just don't. That's the responsibility of the Board of Education. So where we need to work together is now we actually are at a point, and yes, it was 18 months ago that I went to Robert, because we were at a point where we still weren't being given a capital budget from the town, but we could help create one on our own due to surplus, due to grants that offset things. And so because of that, then we were 1000% willing to say, this is money that needs to go to our capital stuff, so we don't have to ask anybody for anything else. We want you guys as the finance people to appropriate that for us. We're gonna say, you tell us, put it into that separate account. We'll come to you and tell you what needs to be done. Now, we also have to remember that as a small town, we have departments. We have a public works department. We have a fire department. We have a library. We don't have a huge maintenance department either. So we do have to work together on things, but then we have to hire outside as well. So it is going to take us working together on projects to get these things done. Absolutely moving forward. And so we're going to have those conversations, but legally, the town board that oversees this is elected, and it's the Board of Education. So we didn't violate anything to do with the charter. We didn't violate anything to do with state statute. And coming up with this policy now is a new policy because we've never had a capital account before. So that's why we went to you guys before. So I'm sorry that sounds long-winded, but it is difficult sometimes when we are a one little town with 3 boards for people to understand that our roles and responsibilities of each, and they are state statute, and they are, clear cut oversight, and it's an elected body. Their job is not to figure out books in the library. That's not the Board of Ed's job. That's here, and they're here. They don't figure out the books in the library. I don't even figure out the books in the library. Taylor figures out the books in the library. So
I will say, for one, I missed something when we were talking about how one school is harder than a bunch of schools. It sounded,
not harder.
I
Sometimes I feel, Jed, like when Jeff kind of simplifies the role of the board, the role of the super, the role of the principal, that because it's one school, he thinks we all run what goes on inside of this building and that's it. And that's not the case.
but isn't it a good deal for the Board of Education if the town capital budget is gonna fund Board of Education projects? Isn't that a win for you guys?
It wouldn't, that would be new. We haven't had that before. There are no projects that have been funded since in the 5 years
Well,
I've been
and-
here.
Right,
Through-
I got it.
Okay, wait a second. My oversimplification, just so everybody understands, my oversimplification is simply, I am talking about the building. I am talking about the walls, the roof, the electrical, the elevator, all of that stuff comes under the capital. When I reference the books and the operational spending, I don't care. I know the Board of Education is really overall responsible. The principal may spend it, but you're responsible for it. And that's where I'm saying the Board of Selectmen doesn't interfere in that. That's what I was trying to express to everybody here. So you understand, when I sit there and reference this building to the fire department and to the library, they all have the same implications to the town. We have to keep them up and we have to do a good job of it. This town has honestly not done the best job of keeping this up until the last 6 or 7 years.
Yes.
Yeah, and anyone who doesn't believe that should, you can't even argue it. Like that we've done more in the last 6 or 7 years.
Every
6
road
or
in
7
town's
years.
okay, it's a new thing, there's a lot of stuff happening the last 6 or 7 years.
You know,
And it didn't happen before, so
and
it wasn't
listen-
just a school that was neglected, because I think the school was neglected for many
Who was
years.
neglected?
The roads were neglected, the buildings were neglected, so.
And
it
this is the
wasn't just
issue,
one-
and this is the issue that the superintendent will sit there and take, except it's a pool. We only have a pool for everything. I can't do everything I would want to do for the Board of Education and for this building. We cannot. We can't do everything for our roads, as Bill sits there and reference. We can't do everything for every building that we need to. We chip away. And if we don't work as a team, and you can wait for me.
Yep.
If we don't work as a team, we will continue to fight over this, right? It's either we work together and we get it done, and you come back to the group, whether it's the Board of Education, the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Finance, the CIP is how it's supposed to be done. Go to CIP and present your plan for what you want done and when. And then you can sit there and be at the table at the same time as we allot our monies for the $1.5 million that we have available, right? To sit there and see what we can do.
How do you think Board of Selectmen oversees the Board of Ed?
No, I told you that.
You
So,
don't.
no, so who, my question is a sincere one, I'm not trying to be confrontational with you, Jeff. So who is it that goes to CIP? The Board of Selectmen or the Board of Education?
The CIP group makes
But
recommendations.
who goes to them?
Your
Your
list of
representative.
priorities, your
The
plan.
what?
Your representative who's been on the board for how many years?
So, but I'm trying to back up, so if the Board of Ed decides that there's a project here.
Yeah.
That needs to be done and they want to move forward with that project and it's not our general fund. What's the trajectory of where they go from there? Who do they go to first?
Even though,
Gotta be-
even though,
so it's gotta
even though
say-
the charter says that it doesn't say operational, Jeff, I'm looking here on my thing, it said it does
You can
not
go
apply to
your
the Board of
attorney.
Education.
You can go to your attorney and go ask him the question.
Yes.
And you've never listened to him.
No,
Yes.
it's not, Tom Moody is not our attorney.
Okay, somebody else is.
No, never.
Who's
Tom
that?
Moody came as an advisor, as a courtesy last time, Jeff.
Okay, didn't you own the building? Are you responsible?
We are
you
responsible by law.
By law,
We are responsible for the care, maintenance, and operation
maintenance.
of buildings, land,
Yeah.
apparatus, and other property used for school purposes, and at all times shall ensure all such buildings and capital equipment contained therein against loss in an amount blah, 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 blah. By law, we're responsible for buildings, land.
You can twist
And-
it any way.
No,
you want.
I'm not
So-
twisting a
so
damn
it's just a
thing,
building. You
Jeff.
guys can decide what you want. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Um,
By law, the Board of Education shall have the care, maintenance, and operation,
Yep, maintenance and operation, agreed.
okay,
Keep going.
of buildings,
Okay.
lands. So we
So
have a,
we're
we
not-
have a property
Right,
that by the lines and whatnot defines what the property is for the school, correct?
right. Are we?
But Shannon, if you want to build a new school next
No,
year,
no,
say you want to build a new school.
Okay,
how would
Guys,
that get
I'm
done?
not trying to get, all I'm trying to say is, look, it's two things. We have a law and we have a charter. The charter says the Board of Education doesn't have to go before CIP, which is where this whole thing came into it.
I'm just asking, if you want to build a new school, how would you go about it? How would you build a new school, and how would that happen? Would you do that out of your operational budget, or you'd have to go to the town to get the capital funds to build a new school?
Correct, I
Okay.
guess that's true.
Thank you very much, that's
But
it,
then-
that's what just trying to
but
say,
then-
the capital building. It's a
Okay,
capital-
but then what
owned by the
is
town.
our responsibility, Bill?
Well, you just said,
Can you
the
read the
operational
rest of that?
maintenance of the building.
No,
Okay?
it's
No,
the care.
Care is maintenance.
Hey, Hannah,
Okay.
So here's what I'm hearing. Is Shannon, you talked about some things you're responsible for, building and all that kind of stuff.
Yep,
It doesn't talk about the process by which you execute those responsibilities, which can be through going to the capital improvement plan and working with all the other priorities of the town. And you've got a voice, and a very strong one, that you can get in there and make your case for why these things are important. And we've got to work together at that with a little bit of.
it can be checked, but our charter says we don't go to CIP. It's not just for our operational budget.
Does the charter say
I'll
you
say-
can't do CIP?
It doesn't say
It
that.
does-
It
Okay,
says that we are exempt from CIP.
Why have we had a member from the Board of Education on CIP for as long as I've been engaged in this?
Why do we have one from the Board of Finance? Why do we have one from the Fire Board of?
Because it's
Commission.
common sense, it makes
That's
sense.
that's-
I-
You bring your.
It doesn't.
budget.
We don't, we never have.
okay.
I'd
What,
like to
let's
say
hold on just a minute. And go ahead.
I've been on CIP now for almost a year, and to me, it seems like people come with their projects, we listen, oh yeah, that sounds good. Okay, yeah, we'll say go ahead and do it, but we don't really understand on CIP, the finance end of it. That's the finance, the Board of Finance. And then I think that having a 5-year capital plan is probably one of our best things, so that we can look at everything at what's coming and what's coming in the future, maybe, you know, you guess at it, but you plan it. And the other thing I wanted to say is the way I look at it, the school, the Board of Education and the school is the custodian of the property. The property is owned by the town, but the school is the custodian of it and has to manage the care of it. So it's that in-between thing like Valerie was saying.
That's called
But-
working together.
I agree
work
100%
together. I
with you.
like the idea of the tri-board policy as a way to discuss these things with just 2 people from each board instead of trying to get this whole crowd together and agree on something.
And I agree with you 100%. And nothing happens within, in my mind, nothing happens, common sense tells me nothing happens to this building without the approval of the Board of Education. Even if we come up, let's sit there and say that the Board of Selectmen decided they wanted to do something to the school. We wanted to add a new elevator.
Build a pool.
Right, build a pool, we build a pool. If we didn't have your buy-in, we can't do it. Just the same way, if you don't have
Or
our
put fans in the
buy-in,
gym.
you can't do it. Yeah, say that.
The fans in the gym, you guys,
Well, listen, the fans in the gym, if you sit there and say you don't want the fans, then guess what? You don't have to have the fans. That
that's my
choice.
point, but Jeff came and presented that to the board. of
Jeff
Ed.
was trying to do something that's appropriate for that building in my mind, because we do have heat loss there.
Yes,
Whether you want the
and-
fans or
no,
not.
we approved it, I'm
Oh.
saying that's a good.
I thought you were
I'm-
condemning my
I'm-
board.
No,
My board.
Jeff, she's making it.
Okay.
Altering your point.
So
Give it-
those are the whole, that's the whole thing. It's all, to me, it's all common
So
sense. We got so far off the
how
track.
do we move forward? How do we move forward? How do we work together? Because we've spent 50 minutes rehashing the past. This was all discussed at the last tri-board meeting. So how do we use this money, this $209,000 in this fund for the bathrooms? And I'll tell you, Jeff, the priorities are the bathrooms. The other priority is the elevator, and the other priority is the driveway, in that order. So number 1 is the bathroom, number 2 is the elevator, and number 3 is the driveway. So yes, we don't have a 5-year capital plan. We are working on that. That is one of our goals, to have a 5-year plan. We have made that very clear to our superintendent and the other members of the board, that that's what we're gonna do.
Okay.
So we are working on that. But how do we get along? How do we work together to fix the bathrooms, to fix the elevator, and to fix the driveway? How do we do that? Instead of rehashing who owns this, who's custodial of this? How do we come up with a plan right now, tonight, to do this stuff.
Celeste,
That's what I would like,
Simple as it can be.
right,
If the Board of Education sits there and says that the bathrooms is the number one priority.
which I just
Okay, you
said.
just did. We
Yep.
go in with our budget and we
Yep.
sit there and say, we have $200,000 in this fund.
Yep.
Non-taxed to the citizens because they've been taxed on it before.
Right.
It's not in the current year. We're not raising our revenue that
nope.
needed. We sit there and determine what the price is for the bathrooms. Let's say it's $350,000. We need another $150,000. Then we have to determine whether we can go to the Board of Finance with that request for an extra $150,000 to do the bathrooms. Right?
Right.
Now, it would have been nice, it would have been nice if maybe the bathrooms were on the list 5 years ago
Right.
as a potentially coming down the road issue. That's not how it's been, that's not what's going on, you're gonna get to it,
We're getting there.
right? So my whole point is, it's, if you say that's your priority.
Right.
We have $200,000, $212,000 in the Board of Education Building Fund. We go to the Board of Finance and we say, hey, listen. Bathrooms need to get done, here's the expected cost, this is the extra money we need, can we raise it this year, yes or no?
Who's we?
The
That's
Board
the
of
whole question.
Finance, I just said.
No, who's going to the Board of
to the Board
Finance?
of
The
Finance?
Board of
That's
Ed
the
or
whole
the Board of
question.
Selectmen?
Both.
It's both, it's together because again, in our budget is the capital money. The budget for the capital money is not in the Board of Education's.
No,
budget.
it's not.
We have to go
So,
together.
so I think if you go back to the policy that Robert and
Same
Shannon
thing.
tried to work on,
Right.
that's what they were trying to
Right.
create without it being all of us here at the table.
No, but you are sitting there. You are sitting there looking at one narrow issue of the Board of Education and the money that's in that fund. That's it. It's not the whole town. It's not every other building in this town. It's not everything. You have to look at it in a holistic, total manner to determine if that's where the money can go, because that's what's got to get to the Board of Finance. And again, the Board of Finance can make any change to what it wants anyway. It's just how
But
it
to get-
is.
But to go back to, I don't know if it's Joanne or Celeste, how do we go forward? I think the way we do that is you got a good first step there. You said bathrooms, elevator, and parking lot.
Right.
So that takes care of the next thing. You know, we know your priorities, we'll integrate them with this other stuff. If we begin with the end in mind, there's this capital improvement plan, and it will say in there that the Board of Ed priorities are these three, and then we'll take a look at what the town priorities are. And maybe we can't get the parking lot this year. But
You would
but
not get the
hopefully you
parking.
would
We don't
understand.
want the parking lot, we want the bathrooms.
So, yeah, I got it, but that process, through that capital improvement plan committee, brings together a plan that we all talk about, where the selectmen's gotta be on board with it before it goes to the town meeting, or the finance has to be on board with it, and Board of Ed has to be on board with it. Everybody should be agreeing.
So we just gotta figure out how we're to fund it, that's all. So we have to figure
Yeah,
out
well,
what the budgets are, how much each one cost, prioritize, and then we figure out how we're gonna raise the money, and if we have to have a 5-year plan to raise $400,000 for a new roof, or whatever the amount of money is, we put that plan together and figure out how we're to fund it, but if no one's talking to each other, you just gotta do things in your own little vacuum, how you gonna raise the money to do these things? That's the only reason I think Jeff is saying what he's saying, and we're all trying to say, is we need to agree and work together to fund projects. There's no way you on your own, through your operational budget, standing all alone in your own little silo, say, we're gonna do this, this, and this. Really, we're gonna get the money for that. You gotta have a plan, you gotta have prices, and you gotta say, this is how we're gonna raise the money, put it to the town. And the town figures,
And
okay, yes.
reality is, at the end of the day, that all comes back to like we as a Board of Education need to trust the other two
I
boards.
think I said the word
That-
trust early in the.
That we all want what's best for our town and our schools, right?
Correct.
Like to trust that we now have this fund which exists, and when we put money into that, that it's going to stay there for capital improvement projects. Otherwise, like, we're just giving the money back to the town anyway, so it doesn't make a difference.
Okay, so
But-
go back to that. It's not just the school's money that built that. It's the taxpayers' money that built that fund, because
Of
we put
course.
$100,000 extra
Of
in,
course.
even though everybody believes that 100,000, 112, or whatever came back from the school it's there, and from an accounting perspective, it's a fund. It's not going away.
That's what I'm saying.
The town is not going to spend it on something else. The Board of Selectmen is not gonna rate it to go buy another plow truck.
Right, but you need trust.
Yeah.
You need the Board of Ed to trust that.
But even if you don't trust it, it's the auditor. It's like, there's a whole issue with the auditor audits it and sits there and says, that's what's in that non-lapsing fund. And that's what's there. I
So
mean,
how do
heck,
we move
heck,
forward?
heck, for anything, we had,
Other funds that had their money taken
Also,
out.
Eric's had their hand up for like a half an
Library,
hour.
I think it was somebody else, and they had money taken out by the town that needed the funds for something else.
that's a good conspiracy.
Eric?
I like that.
You need
Well,
to
I-
sit here so that you can hear you.
And then.
I need Valerie come over here,
And then
you're
Jeff.
gonna go over to Eric, and then I wanna hear what you got to say.
Jed, when you're, Eric Becker has his.
So different.
Eric did. Yeah,
Double Eric.
The other thing I'm interested in is, does the town have a good definition of what a capital project is?
Probably not as good as it should be.
Okay,
But,
so I think
but
that's a good takeaway too.
from the standpoint, from a common sense standpoint, it's the building.
Oh, yeah, I understand.
bones.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
Not to reference it again, but there is a pretty good definition of what would be considered a capital project in the policy
We
that
did
they
that
wrote
last
together.
one, yeah.
But
not in the charter.
But also
No,
as
not
an
in the charter.
existing definition that the Board of Finance has voted on and agreed to as part of their normal policies. So you could certainly start with that definition also. I happen to think that definition was a little low personally. I would prefer it to be higher. But that's a Board of Finance. Ultimately, I think that's a Board of Finance decision where they think the line is between capital and operating or capital maintenance.
And that's where it is a threshold, right?
Right,
Cause
where
if you
that.
look based off that definition, like when we got the floors refinished, that would have been a capital project. The money threshold.
Two quick things before Eric too. We have to, we're thankful that in the past, they used their operational budget to do these things. So that's a great thing. So I mean, because there was money left over and they put it towards things that were needed. And also that this fund was created is such a positive. That's why, what I can't take from some of these meetings is why we're dragging it down with the minutia when now we have it. We just need a plan. Let's get them all prioritized. And we're moving to that direction. So it's so positive that the trust has to be there so we can get it off the ground. So, thank you, Eric.
Has there been a number put for the bathrooms yet?
No, we're working to get an estimate, but roughly, Scott, we're looking at anywhere between 250 to 300,000. Closer to
Okay,
300.
hold it. So Eric, I'd like you to finish up your nickel's worth here.
So it's a big project,
It's a big
you know,
project.
doing the bathrooms.
Yes, yeah.
When we had this discussion last spring, you know, my take on it was the very first thing that needed to happen was you needed to find an MEP.
Right.
A civil engineer that specializes in mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. I interviewed a couple of them. We brought one out to give us an evaluation and a quote. As far as I understand, we could have executed that last spring. And we could have done it with the money that the Board of Selectmen agreed to take out of the building maintenance fund to fund it and not the capital fund. Well, that is a capital fund, just take it out of a different. But the Board of Ed made the decision you wanted to find a different engineer.
Right,
So-
specifically to have someone who dealt with things that happen in schools and how specific those
Understood,
rules are.
understood.
It
And-
wasn't for like
Yeah,
a negative reason.
no, and I think that's one of the things the engineer said, was there were some parts of that he was uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
Because it was a school, and that's why he was subbing
A lot of it.
some of
out,
the
yes.
design phase out to an architect.
Right,
So they covered that,
right.
and that's fine. And I think the town could still potentially cover the cost of the MEP as long as it's reasonable out of that fund and preserve the capital fund. I think, and I don't know what a potential surplus is for the school, but presuming that there's a reasonable surplus in the school's budget, I don't see any reason why we can't, as part of the normal budget process, request additional money for that, and you return a portion of the whatever you have left to that fund and have the cash on hand to do that next summer. But if you're gonna do that, you need to execute right now with the MEP to give them long enough time to come up with a plan.
Right.
You know, and then it's gonna have to go out to RFP. The other thing I don't understand, and I don't know what the breakoff is, but obviously the state has some funding available for schools for major capital maintenance projects. I don't know what's involved with that. I was reading a school recently was planning on redoing all the roofs of their schools. And they were getting about 80% of that funding from the state and 20% was coming out of their own coffers. That sounds great to me. But I don't know the rules for any of the school stuff. I know, you know, what grants are available on the town side. So that would be something I would think you would want to pursue, because if you can spend somebody else's money, that's always better. Obviously, it's gonna be over the threshold that it will be a prevailing wage job. You're gonna have to deal with the Connecticut Council on Human Rights, so it seems to me that's a big enough project, you're gonna need some construction oversight on it, whether you hire a GC, you know, and have him do it. But you gotta start with the plan first, and you're gonna have to hire a professional to do it, because that's too big to just have a plumber come up with a
No,
plan for
Yeah,
it.
no, absolutely, yeah.
So I know the last, takeaway I wrote down from the last meeting was, I think the Board of Ed would like to have agreement that they can put money from a preceding year into the capital plan budget without hurting them financially with future budgets. I know you've gone off and worked hard, Valerie, on getting grants, and you wanted to have that money used for the school.
Yes.
Does that, when we've talked about this capital budget for the school thing, does that resolve? Or is there still
If
something out
Robert
there?
and Shannon's policy goes through the Board of Finance, absolutely. Because the 103 that we had left from last year is in there. The 100 that was asked of this 24-25 budget from the town is in there. The original 8,000 is in there, so that's the 212. And then when this audit is finished, surplus, we would ask the Board of Finance permission to put it in there from the year that they're finishing up now. And then, yes, all of that money is money that we are looking for the 3 priorities as Celeste mentioned them. So yes, that's absolutely all we need the Board of Finance to say is, yep, as soon as you have a number, when the audit's done, come to us. And yep, that would be where we go, because we know we have priorities. And then as a project is approved by the board, they would certainly go to the Board of Finance and say, okay, let's talk. And I'm sure the Board of Finance would say, okay, let's talk to CIP. Show us what you got here, or the selectmen, show us what you got. And, yeah, because to Eric's point, we absolutely have already found potential oversight umbrella companies, contract companies. Boston O'Neill was one of them that came and presented to the board. Because we are, and we have that proposal, they've already given it to them, the oversight, because we are aware that, we can need that. So yeah, the problem would be solved,
Yeah.
absolutely, if, when we had a number, we're able to go to the board, and like we used to with the 2% before the law changed, and say, hey, this is what we have left. We're okay with you, we put it in here, and you guys, you were to say yes, that goes in there, and then we can't take it out without information.
So I'm trying to wrap this portion up. But do you have I know you submit lots of grants and you've gotten
Yeah.
lots of money for the betterment of the school. And I don't think any of them have been for the state money for the schools that Eric was talking about for roofs and buildings.
No.
Is that something you can do, or is that something?
So when those come up and we're eligible, absolutely. Those,
Okay,
when
so-
those come up and they're eligible, those are ones that I would have to
Yep.
automatically sit down with the Board of Selectmen before even the Board of Finance. Because those state projects, that money is different than most of the other grants that we get. That one's more like what the town gets in their steep grants and other municipal grants, where the actual application itself requires, and the last time I found in this town it was done was when the septic was done back in the 90s in the back. It was the same kind of thing. You had to put together a council
And the council had to include certain members of the board of selectmen, members of finance, it was a whole committee that had to be put together. Those grants absolutely require that. That is not something that anybody can do alone, so.
So here's one of the things that I think. I like the way the town has done recently, if they've started bragging about all the projects we're doing. Because we've got grants to do, whether it's the bridge, the ball fields, the
Community center.
the community, yeah, the new
Pickleball
parking right
courts.
there, all that stuff, we're saying, we couldn't have done any of this stuff without the grants, and, that's. I think it would be advantageous to the school when they're talking about their budget to somehow figure out how to do that same kind of thing. But I know there's been a reluctance to show all the grant money we're bringing in because you think it's gonna get cut out of the budget with you. And if you're using it for good things with the capital stuff, in that, I don't think that's
The
the case.
surpluses, Jed, were not as a result of capital grants. Those have been few and far between,
Yep, I got it.
on a school level.
Mhm.
I did apply for one that I worked with Eric in the town on, which was a steep grant that didn't go through, but any of those capital, I would absolutely have to go through them, and make sure that we fill that application out together. But the other grants, that come along, none of them have been capital.
Okay.
The surplus money is because of it taking care of other things that
Yeah.
didn't need to come out of the.
And I don't understand and don't wanna understand the financial the regulations that go through that, but I do think that the way ahead is to start on the next section of this, where we listen to the Board of Ed before Celeste leaves in 5 minutes.
Yes,
And
sorry.
she's already given most of what she's got.
I know, I'm a babysitter, I'm sorry.
But
Gotta get back.
I would like to move on to the next one and hear what the Board of Ed.
Sure.
On the capital grants, the roof project that was done about 6, 7 years ago was state funded. It was assisted.
Okay.
I'm just letting you know.
Jed, real quick, just pointing out, Jerry's had his hand up for a little while now, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I just want to say, I'm listening to everybody who's speaking. And I hear a lot of agreement. What I'm puzzled by, we had put the agreement that everybody's agreeing to. Shannon worked with Robert for a long time, many hours, to put together a policy or a roadmap. Call it what you will. It's a roadmap to move from point A to point B. Why is it that roadmap was brought to the Board of Selectmen and rewritten by the town attorney that looked nothing like the original agreement?
The Board of Finance is the one that said, we agree with this, we like it, it was put together. And the Board of Finance just said, let's just make sure the town attorney, or one attorney, I don't know, town attorney, just looks at it and make sure it all is good, it's copacetic. And I guess from there is where it got a little, got kind of loose, funky, okay?
So that
So
should be
I
the
think
next
that's,
homework.
you're well intentioned, we just wanted to make sure that what we were doing was, and I think BOE agreed, as we look at it, make sure this is all legal. That's where it is.
And I'll be really honest, I don't remember sending it to the town attorney. I didn't send it to him.
I don't know who did. Was it you, Shannon? I don't know who sent it to the town attorney, the draft that you and Robert
I
created.
thought it was sent by the Board of Finance for review.
Was it Board of Finance that you sent it to?
Don't know.
I didn't, I don't know if Mark did, I mean, I have
Okay,
it here,
so-
we had agreed to it, we liked it.
Whether
But-
it might have been because you requested that we sent it, I don't recall.
But what's the next step?
It was
Can I
many months
know
ago.
what the next step is? Cause I guess I got the impression from you, Jeff, that like the Board of Selectmen doesn't want this, is not
I'm
going
only
to agree to
one member,
this.
I'm only one member.
I
Only
know,
one member.
I know.
I would tell you, I was never in favor of it. We were never consulted in the initial stages of it. And I would have gone through the same issues again. We have a process in place. We can all work together if you try. If you don't try, you can put this policy in place. And there will be members of my board that will vote for that policy. I would not be one of them. So I'm just telling you, we have a way to do it. It has worked in the past if we work together.
Can we make a good faith effort to try to use the existing policy? And if it doesn't work, then we'll go you know, and I'm certainly not the guy who's gonna figure out whether it works or not, but.
Which draft though?
I
Jeff?
I
No,
would-
he's
I would
saying,
tell
he's
them
saying,
way-
he's saying
Try
the way that he's
the-
saying to do it.
the
So we
capital-
go to CIP, which we're not required to do, but we can, as a board, say, we're gonna go to CIP. Okay? And then they go to the Board of Selectmen, and then the Board of Selectmen goes to the Board of Finance, right? That's
We can. all-
summarizing what you're.
Listen, Celeste, I could get together with you in 5 minutes and come up with a plan to sit there and say, okay, this is what we're gonna present to you.
I think it's already
It's
done.
gotten out of control.
It pretty much is. We just need to
Go.
put dollar signs
Done.
next to it.
Okay.
But the first step might be to try that process, because we didn't know what it was a while ago. Now we're starting to figure it out, I think. It sounds pretty reasonable to me. And if it doesn't work, then we can, modify it a little bit.
So
But-
what, so, I mean, and not to cut you off, Jed, I'm sorry, but, I mean, I've given you, the top three. It's the bathrooms, it's the elevator, and it's the driveway. So what more, I guess, what more information do you need to move things
I
forward?
think the first thing is just how much is it
How
gonna
much
cost?
is it gonna cost?
And then how are we gonna fund it as the Board of Finance? How are we gonna fund it? We got so much money in a non-recurring fund, what more money are we gonna need and how are we gonna raise it? It's gonna be through taxation, or does Eric find have a way, or do you have to insert plus? Somehow or another figure out how to do it.
To say earlier, you just
And-
put your priorities.
All right,
how
and
So
you
when does
total
finance
amount.
need that information?
I guess if we wanna get this project done this year, I guess we need it as soon as possible. We
You need to do it all
Someone's
now.
point earlier, we gotta, I think Eric said,
And we
we gotta get the MVP, we gotta get the,
Right.
RFP, has to go out to RFP. We gotta get the cost, and then,
Well,
we know,
we
we got
need
this
we
money
need a range.
arranged.
What we need
Yes,
is a
I'm not gonna
range.
give you, I'm
You're
not gonna give
give us a
you it.
final.
Right, okay.
But,
Just a range.
but just a
Okay.
range, and if the range is $350,000 and we can get it done for 310, the town is better off,
Okay.
right?
But we
So-
can't for 350.
You just sit there and you gotta get a range.
What's that?
But,
You have ranges. Yeah.
but when does it need to be to support the accelerated budget process that we kind of created?
Needs to be part of the accelerated budget.
Now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pretty
Well,
much.
put the budget together.
Yeah.
Over the next 3-4 months.
so I would think the first step would be get the budget for the bathroom.
Okay.
That was the top of your list,
Okay.
We have
and
it.
if you can't,
We
okay,
have
We
that.
have that, we have that.
how about the elevator?
We don't have any, but we have.
We have like guesstimate.
We do.
Okay, that's all I
But,
need.
but that's what a capital plan is a
Okay.
guesstimate.
Yeah.
It's just,
Not a formal-
here are the things that we see coming down the road that we have to plan for as a community. That's it. That's all it is.
And I think you know the answer to the driveway.
But even the driveway, and I would sit there and go, the driveway? We probably as a town are not just gonna wanna pave that driveway. We wanna pave the whole lower parking lot and the rest of the parking lot for the town hall that didn't get done, and maybe even the
We
fire
also
department
need the
parking lot.
basketball court. It has a giant.
All of those
like,
things should
giant
get
hole in it.
rolled into what are the overall priorities for everybody.
And so, the way I see this going forward is that Shannon is a member of the capital improvement plan, takes those priorities and meets with these other people, and hopefully we get consensus on this will work.
So get this information to you, Shannon, and then Shannon presents it. Okay.
And.
And I know
Jody,
you've gotta
have a
leave.
template for what?
Well, I can put together a template. That's all I'm saying, the headers
Okay,
and then,
I don't want to do that tonight.
Yeah.
but-
Oh, no, we're not
but-
doing that. tonight.
But here's the opportunity, I think, after we get, I think we've just done 6A, which is identify major items that affect future costs in the 25-26 budget year. You'd like all three of those in there. They might not all three make it, but we know your priorities. And then you start looking at the next 3 to 5 years. You don't have that tonight, so there's nothing to brief for tonight. But you'll start thinking about those
Yes,
things
we're working
so
on
we
that.
can figure it out. Now, you're gonna have to leave, but the
I
rest
am
of the
gonna
board
go.
of ed,
But I
Kids stay
members
here
here,
and listen
yes,
to the town.
yes,
when we get
Yeah.
those things, and I think,
thank you,
I think it's gonna be easy now.
yes.
It's gonna get hard in the future when the RAM budget starts going up again. But
Yeah,
Cause it
we,
will.
we need to practice it while it's easy.
Right, thank you, everyone, I appreciate it, thank you, Jeff, thank Bill, thank you.
Anything else?
I was just gonna say that This Celeste brought this plumbing project to CIP back in March
Okay,
of this year. So that's already gone to CIP. Now we just gotta keep moving with everything else. Remember that, Celeste?
I'm sorry, yeah, one more
You
time.
came, you went to
The
CIP.
plumbing to
Yes,
CIP.
with this project.
Yes, I did.
And, that it was to go and get the, MEP.
Yep,
Right, and CIP approved
yep,
getting
So
an
we approved that, so now we've got to keep moving with the rest of it.
right, right.
So that part of the process has been done already.
so is there anything else about budget priorities for the Board of Education that anybody on the Board of Education would like to share at this point, before we go on to the town priorities?
So when I had written that in the agenda, I didn't necessarily mean capital projects, but I don't know, I thought you guys wanted an overview of like. What the percent budgetary increase is or what things are driving major changes.
We thought we'd touch base on the budget process since we're all together, you know, right in the middle of it.
What are you anticipating as a percentage increase?
I'm not the person to answer that question.
We don't have a number yet, however, I can speak to some of the things that you'll anticipate, real quick. I mean, the good news is, I don't have as many needs as I know the town did last year, because I know that 16, or I promise it's not 16. So that's good, because I know that was tough last year with the needs that the town had. But we are expanding, and we've been expanding, you know, slowly, a few kids here and there for the past 5 years, thank goodness. The question on there was, where do we anticipate demographically in the next 5 years? Normally, pre-COVID, it was NASDAQ numbers, and that was pretty easy. It was, you know, very, very easy to look. I know, you know, we have that through RAM, and so they were able to predict Hebron, Andover, Marlboro, and those numbers are not as accurate for this year because of some of the changes that have happened for us, in terms of, people moving in to the town of Andover. No, this chair is actually easier. This is actually easier. So we are growing each year now by 10 to 15 kids. This year, with the exception, it was more than that. And that was because we opened that for preschool with that necessity. Good news is you'll see babies all over town. And our preschool will continue to maintain 60 to 62 kids religiously now. Because if we fall a few kids short, it's absolutely gonna be filled in that pre-K program with our neighbors from Hebron and Marlboro. So that's not an issue, that program itself. You'll notice this year, we're not gonna have to put it, and it hasn't been in the 5 years I've been in here in the general fund, it's still self-sufficient, which is great. So you won't see any increases due to the increase in preschool. So that's wonderful. We're talking about now, let's see, when I got here, we had 174 kids, we're at 243, 44 kids. We've grown by at least 2 full classrooms, 60 to 70 kids. We can see the difference there, which is fantastic. When we look at the growth numbers for the next couple of years, we anticipate again, 10 to 15 kids growth minimum. We know that people within this building are putting in 4 houses, and if you know anybody in town that sells houses, they can tell you that most people have lost bids now. Rosemary, poor Rosemary here. One of her children has been looking for a house in Andover for a while, and today they realized that they lost the 11th bid for a house here. So that's all great news. The houses are selling like hotcakes for more than they're advertised for. So when we look at demographic numbers, that's where we are. We have tried to allow those classes to explode because we were kind of between numbers there. I know if you go back to 2010, I'll give you a packet when we get to the budget from 2008 till now in terms of class size and numbers and things like that. But when you look at the demographics there, we have you know, let the classes get as big as we could possibly let them legally even get. So 3rd grade, for example, this year is 36 kids in it, and so there's just no way next year to go to 1 4th grade class. That's against the law. So we will have to add an additional 4th grade class to accommodate that one. After the start of the school year this year, our 4th grade balloons to 27 kids, which everybody holds their breath because nowhere ever, and I've gone back to the year 2000, and there's no way ever that the class sizes here were higher than 20. You know, I mean, it just wasn't. And so the 27th, thankfully, we have a fairly new teacher who she doesn't know any different, so it's wonderful because she's never had those classes of 15, so she's a fantastic teacher. And the needs of the kids in that class, with the exception of just a couple, were reasonable, because that always denotes class size as well. For example, hypothetically, you couldn't have a class of even 16 if 7 of them were students that were diagnosed with autism. That would be unreasonable. But you could have a class of 17 or 18 kids if in fact there are no high needs kids in that class easily. So that also plays a factor in it. We're up to 26 kids in 5th grade. And so those upper classes, the 10 new kids that came in this year were not all pre-K. We got a large number of last minute, 4th and 5th and 6th graders. We can hold off one more year on 6th. It'll be big next year. That one will be 20 what, Taylor? 27. But we definitely legally have to have a new 4th grade class and 5th. And keep in mind, as we get back to the heyday of the time period when we had at least 3 classes per grade here, that also means that the reductions that were made to specials over the years are going to have to go up a little bit. And so we'll keep those schedules as tight as possible, no extra time. But for example, we have an art teacher that had been dropped to 3 days a week over the past few years because our classes, there were less classes to teach art too. We will need to make that one 4 days next year. Otherwise, the art teacher won't be able to see all of the classes. The other part-time is Spanish. We had dropped that down to 2 mornings. That was a 0.2. So that was technically 1 day a week. That'll have to be 2 days a week next year, or we can't get those classes in as well. And library, the same thing. We had years ago reduced that down to 0.6. So that'll go to 0.8. So total, it's 3.1 is the number of FTEs that we need. So 3 full teachers and a 0.1.
As an increase,
So,
you mean?
as an increase,
Okay.
yeah, so that would be, oh, and we have for intervention, we have our reading specialist full-time. We've had that for a while. We've never been able to waiver on that one because of the needs of the students, but we only have the half-time math interventionist. And so we do need the other part is the math intervention. So a half-time math interventionist, which we're going to try to work with the best we can, the part-time staff that we already have existing here, making them full-time or closer to full-time from the 0.6 to 0.8. So ultimately it'll be the 2 new classroom teachers for grade 4 and for grade 5. So that's what we're looking at there. When we take the new contracts for the cert and the non-cert and build that in, we are not finished yet. We're working on it diligently, but once all those numbers are able to be given to the Board of Ed at the next meeting, not the one this next week, then, I mean, as I said, we're not looking at 16. I would estimate the number, by the way, one other thing, the number for the benefits, the consortium that we all share, Hebron, Andover, Marlboro, Boards of Ed, Town of, and AHM. The number that they have us as a placeholder right now with the insurance consortium is 9%. We will meet again 2 more times before we have to bring our budget to you guys. I know. But keep in mind, when we say 9%, the one advantage is we are still, and this would be why we're still way better off as a self-insured consortium, is we are looking at 9% increase in premiums from this. Now, remember, I have another district and I work with lots of other districts. Most other districts consortiums may be looking at 9% increase from this. Because our insurance consortium is very successful and we pay less as a consortium than a lot of other districts do for another consortium.
That 9% increase, that's the same for town and.
Oh, absolutely, right, it would be, I'd be giving that number to Eric too, yeah, I mean, whatever my number is for percentage of increase for insurance. Of course, we have way more people insured, so the number itself is bigger, but his percentage in the end is gonna be the same as mine. And Hebron and Marlboro and Graham, everybody's number will be the same in the end.
Are there any major special ed increases to the budget for next year?
Not that we know of right now, but we have a couple of adjustments. Remember and that's a really good question. When we look at all of the IEPs, let's say of every kid we have in the district that's special ed, what we are doing right now is going, okay, so hypothetical kid number one, has 3 hours a week of speech. Let's look at the, new IEP for next year. Do they still have 3 hours of speech? No, they have 6. Oh, okay, so now we have to factor in 3 more hours of speech at X number of whatever. OT, PT, any student that would be outplaced, any student that receives other, so we're almost done with that as Taylor finishes with, you know, the meetings with the special ed director and families of kind of knowing where we are. We don't, Kate, anticipate any dramatic increases or changes. We also have to look at the students that attend charter magnet schools, because magnet school tuition comes through my budget as well. So if somebody who resides in Andover has children that attend a magnet school, we get the bill. And there's a line item in there for that. So, we did just find out, but I think we'll still be okay. We did just find out that there was an Andover resident that enrolled a kindergartner in a magnet school, and we got the bill. We're like, who's this even? I don't know who this is. You just get the bill, so.
The good news is we'll get all the fine tuning of the budget
Yeah,
meetings.
yeah.
Like, I know that we're gonna have meetings.
Absolutely.
You're good at,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
really know your stuff and but we're gonna have meetings, you know,
So
where we're gonna go through the.
If you're looking for a rough percentage right now, I would say that it's gonna be someplace between 6.7 and 9. Depending. So remember, we did just settle 2 new contracts. So if you're looking, you know, at what that number looks like with our budget, we can figure it out.
Yeah.
I know right now, if I'm being very honest, and I hate throwing numbers out, especially if people are writing them down, but I mean, I want to be as open and transparent as I can with you. I see that number, probably being in the low to mid 300s. Because you figure there's 2 full staff members as well. So
We appreciate it. We didn't want this meeting to be
No,
all, but no, but it's good. We're here together.
yeah,
And just the major factors that we're gonna contribute in an overview, so that's good. No,
so that, because if you look at that right there, to the new staff that we would need to accommodate the increase right there, I mean, that in my head, I'm trying to figure it out. That's right there, and that's where your like 4.95% is right there.
well, it's unbelievable that you could have 27 or 26 students in a classroom.
And they're doing it this year. They
I have
are.
to say that so,
Yep, they're
kudos
doing
to
it.
that teacher. 'cause
And that is not the impression of the taxpayer in the town.
Right.
The taxpayer in the
Well,
town
your
thinks
staff
you've got
have different-
15 people
Yeah.
or less.
Every
in the
single
class.
one of our
Yes,
agendas
well,
has
But
not
they-
the topic.
it's
of our homework
in
summary.
the Board of Ed agenda packet.
Every agenda packet they can see it, yeah. So, yeah, there's a couple of quite large classes
Yeah,
there,
those are.
you know.
So that covers
Yeah.
demographic projections for the
Yep, there
next
you
3
go.
to 5 years. which
We're getting bigger, we got lots of babies.
Which kind of flies in the face of the state population projections that we're required to use for so many things. You know, we're defying the trend.
What's the current number?
The trend,
No,
well,
no, no, the current-
243.
What is that?
243 what?
Students.
Oh, no.
Enrollment.
Up from 170.
Inclusive of all grades, pre-K and
Every
Yeah.
child we're responsible for, yes.
every child. And when you stated 174 was your starting point, that was before all the pre-K?
No, 174, 5 years ago when I was hired was inclusive of all of the students I was
No,
responsible.
no, no, I understand that. What I'm
And
asking
included
is,
pre-K.
That included pre-K
was
then.
there a pre-K program
Yes,
at that time?
yes.
If a school district has pre-K, when you look at their enrollment numbers, it's in there.
No, 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 I just wanted to know, like, that's a 60 some odd difference. I just wanted to know.
The full day pre-K program started in 2016.
6 or 7 years ago.
It was 2016, because my son was in the first class that was the full day.
So the good thing is, you know, apples to apples, when you're looking at enrollment summaries for every school district, if they have a full-time preschool program, it's in their number. So if they tell you they have 400 kids, all the preschool numbers are in there.
But can I just say, the preschool numbers here 2 years ago were only like 35 students.
Yeah.
So, the preschool is supposed to run basically independently financially, right?
It does.
So that 60 or 61 kids is not indicative of what is K through 6.
Pre-K through 6 is,
I'm just saying that,
You're asking what percent of those are from Andover versus from outside towns?
well, I'm saying that the preschool program has grown leaps and bounds, I think, bigger than necessarily the K through 6. Would you agree?
So-
Oh, yeah,
are
that's
all-
the thing.
are all those
Absolutely.
agreed?
Percentage wise, Liz, you are absolutely right. K through 6, we're getting 10 to 12 kids per year new. We had 11 this year in K through 6 so far, it's December. So,
That's 10 above what you had last year, so if it was last year
Correct,
20, now it's 30.
correct, of the
So-
kids K
so
through
that-
6.
So the number that you, the chart you sent me in the email the other day, if I added up the columns, the K through 6 classes currently versus next year is actually a net -1.
No. Oh, well, it might be. You know why? Because kindergarteners are gonna vary from year to year. So we know how many kindergartners are coming in that we know of and that have not gone to preschool year, that will be coming in next year. And so that's why I'm saying the K6 number, we estimate could be 10 to 15. We don't know. Because we had 11 this year with 6 of them in grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, or 7 of them. How many of them? 6?
I'm just comparing the numbers
Well, you
that you
can't,
put
for-
in, that you put in, what you
you
sent
can't
to
for
us.
kindergarten, because some of those kids don't exist on there yet.
Okay.
They don't exist on there yet, because if they didn't go to preschool here and we know they're coming next year, they're in my next year projection numbers, but they haven't appeared here yet. So, for example, there's a few kids that tried preschool and said, no, I'm not gonna send them to preschool, but they're aging into kindergarten next year. So they're already on my list for kindergarten for next year.
Okay.
So
So they're not part of our current pre-K number, but they will be part of our K number next year.
the 60 children that are in the pre-K program, how many of them are Andover residents?
This year currently, our Andover responsibility, there's 9 kids that took out of town spots. I can tell you that. There's
So
9 kids.
51 are
Are
going to
ours.
progress into the school system.
Right, okay.
So there's a few that may not. So for example, without giving demographic information away about certain people, but hypothetically, if there is a person in this building that works here that is attempting to, hypothetically, attempting to live here and their children are in there, we don't know if their numbers yet will be part of kindergarten that are in preschool, but they're in our AES numbers right now and not our out-of-town numbers.
It's also a mixed age preschool, so just keep in mind they all adult.
Right. So we have 1, 2, and 3-year preschoolers.
Oh, so I was trying to think.
Because
No,
they can't-
that's why we
I was thinking next year, we got
No,
51
no.
kids going in.
Because they changed the cutoff, right? So now that
You're
they're not
fine.
off December 1st, they're
We have
kids that have been in there for 3
because
years.
of that.
Gotcha.
So, we have, for example, one out of towner who this is their 3rd year with us. They were with us before we even, because they didn't have a spot, they came in as, before we had 4 classes. So, but they'll be gone at the end of this year, they'll go to kindergarten in the town that they live in next door. So, but yes, so it's like a 3-year rotation for some of those kids, yes. Yeah,
As opposed to like 60 new kindergartners.
right, and so that's the tough part, Bill, is not only making sure that we know those kids, the ones that we know that live in town, like I get some of these numbers from Carol. Some of the ones that live in town that haven't told us they live in town yet, because if somebody moves in tomorrow and they have a child that's gonna either go to preschool or kindergarten next year, and we don't know, we won't know until enrollment happens.
And they may enroll in August.
Yes, yes, sometimes that happens in August. So, that's the difficulty of those 2 low grades, but everybody else we know, unless they move in. So our numbers are pretty solid for, let's say, 1st through 6th. Unless somebody moves in or out, we're very, very solid with our numbers for 1 through 6. The other ones, pre-K will always be the 60 because we know we can fill those kids outside, and that's why I know it'll be self-sufficient because we know what tuition is. And I know what my grant is the Smart Start School Readiness grants, so that one will remain self-sufficient.
Any
So,
other
okay,
questions
thanks.
for Valerie before we go on to a different topic?
Yeah,
Okay,
can
I know I missed one here,
And
and,
that was important, just like a rundown of the changes. that
yep,
the
I wanted to
charter
get to the
presents.
school part before
No problem.
Celeste left, but, so did you want to talk to the new budget process for the town charter? or-
Well, that's not me, but I was hoping either Eric or Jeff could just tell us quickly, like where you thought the charter, because I know you were involved in making those changes. We talked about it at the big meeting, but
Well, the voters voted on the changes.
Of
just so
course,
everybody's
of
aware.
course.
Are we
And
still
we
waiting for the
accept it.
town attorney and like for them to decide what that ends up being?
There's the wording, I mean, it's basically because, let's go from the budget process. The one thing that didn't pass from the budget process was a quorum for the meeting. So you have to have 25 people go to the town meeting. So what's gonna end up happening is the budget timeline is going to be pushed up so we can coordinate with the RAM referendum.
Right.
So we will only have one budget and first budget referendum
Mhm.
in the town of Andover for both the town budget and the RAM budget.
Mhm.
So it is pushing it up 4 weeks there.
So the townwide budget referendum and RAM referendum will be May 6th. The annual town budget meeting, would be April 9th.
So we have to have everything done April 9th, which is basically almost a month in advance of what we had done in the past. Hopefully it doesn't get any more cumbersome than making some decisions earlier. That way, you know, we're just gonna go through the same process that we've gone through in the past, just 4 weeks earlier.
And we talked about having combination meetings too. Is that part of the charter changes too?
I think that was just meant so that we got together and talked about what was going to happen.
Right now.
Yeah, we're doing it right.
But I used to always attend all of your meetings at the time I knew, so I don't mind that part if we're gonna have a meeting to get together. Okay, so that. Yeah, I just wanted a quick overview of that, but.
I mean, it still will be. Basically, the process from the town side is Eric puts together the budget, we give him our priorities, he then goes back and refines it to sit there and say, we're trying to do things. So last year, what we did was the new community center was coming online, we wanted to put in a community center director, a senior center director to sit there and make the best use of that space as we possibly could. So that was pretty much our largest transaction for last year that we pushed forward. So the reality is the town budget is fairly, and we have not pushed for any significant increases in numbers of years. I mean, last year was probably the largest that you've seen come out of our budget cycles for 6 years. I don't necessarily know, Eric, that there's anything significant on the agenda for the next budget cycle coming up, unless you tell me I'm unaware of.
No, I mean, if you look at the major cost drivers, we're gonna be paying less for diesel and heating fuel this year rather than last. Which is not a huge line item, but it helps. We're gonna be paying a little bit more for electricity, but in terms of major projects, the Bunker Hill Bridge, that is cost neutral, that is fully funded. The problem is we probably really should pursue a bank line of credit so that we have swing funding, because there's a time gap between when we owe the contractors the money and when we get reimbursed by the state and federal government.
And we voted for that at the last
Right, but
finance meeting.
that,
Eric, can I get you to come over here because you're going into your own little section here, and I think
Yeah.
the owl won't pick you up where you are.
Al doesn't like you there.
Yeah, he doesn't like us down here either, but.
Do you guys not
but you
have
gotta take a chance.
a line of credit currently?
no, we don't.
You don't at all?
No. Okay, so
Thank you.
we will need to pursue a line of credit. That does technically take a town meeting. That is not something the Board of Finance or Board of Selectmen has the authority to authorize on their own. So that's gonna have to happen sometime sooner rather than later. The other large project will be the repair or replacement of the bridge / culvert on Lake Road at Basola. This next budget cycle, if we continue to fund the bridge and culvert fund, that one will be fully funded. That's half paid for by the state, half paid for by the town. After that, we got somewhere around a $6 or $7 million backlog in medium-sized culverts that are rated poor or failing. So we got a bunch of stuff we're gonna have to address in the next 10 or 15 years, but for right now, we're focusing on Lake Road. So,
And those would be capital projects?
oh yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
no, just
Yeah,
wanted to.
no, they're
so
very
we-
definitely
we,
capital
we- we talked about failing culverts and, you know, school
Driveways.
stuff, it's gotta be integrated for the best of the town.
Yep. Other large projects, the community center fit out. We did get an ARPA senior center specific grant. We need to allocate the money for that at the next Board of Selectmen meeting, because we have to do it by the end of the year. We have a little bit left in our existing ARPA funds that we'll spend out. Both of those will be spent on outfitting the kitchen at the community center. We are still awaiting word about whether we will get a federal legislative appropriation that will fund the generator and finishing the first floor of that building. It made it through the Senate Appropriations Committee, but given the political climate, I've been told that that's a lot of those will not get funded. So we may or may not get that. We won't know till the earliest March now, apparently. They said that's when the earliest they think there'll be a budget passed. It was supposed to be passed in October, but they never come out on time. The Route 316 multi-use pathway, that is still in the design phase. Between initial design money and construction money, we've secured about $2.9 million in total funding. We're still missing somewhere around $100,000 to finish the design. So that's gonna have to be something that the Board of Finance considers. But look at it on the bright side, we still will have funded 97% of the cost. So that's pretty good. That's it. We're not looking at any other major personnel changes. We are, so you are all aware, losing our resident state trooper in about 2 weeks.
You say losing, he's gonna be replaced or we're losing?
No, it will be, so we should know within the next week who the temporary replacement will be. The state police has already put out the notice of availability. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of choice in who they assign to us as resident state troopers, but resident state trooper positions are really good gigs for police officers. So I've certainly already had multiple people, police officers, approach me and ask me questions about the town of Andover that are clearly going to apply for the job. So the uncertainty with that is until you know the seniority of the trooper assigned, you have no idea what the cost structure is. Then that can be
For
a
like how much?
plus or minus $30,000 or $40,000, depending on their seniority. Because what we pay for is we pay a salary plus a set amount of indirect costs that's associated with that position for, you know, vehicle and equipment and, you know, all that stuff. So I don't know when we're gonna know that. Even as soon as a trooper is assigned, we should be able to make a reasonable estimate as to what our cost basis will be, but that's.
Our budget.
Now, do you not know, did you not know what that trooper's status is or years of service is prior to interview or prior to making the offer?
Well, see, we don't get to make the offer.
I mean,
So we contract
they
with
just
the
give us
state police,
they just give
and the state police assign us a resident state trooper.
Oh, gotcha.
We actually have zero say in who we get.
Oh,
Um,
as the temporary person or as either the temporary
Either.
or the permanent?
either.
Really?
Once they assign it, then we know.
Wow,
So,
nice.
when we went from, for those of you who knew Daryl Tatro was a very senior. By the time he left here, he went to another town, was immediately promoted to a sergeant, got promoted to a lieutenant. Now he is running, basically 4 of the troops in the eastern half of the country. So he went from Andover to being a police captain in about a year because he was a very, very senior guy. When we transitioned to Sebastian, it was about a $40,000 savings, versus the trooper we had. So until we know what that is, that's a variable cost. I don't really know that. So the other thing that we all have to be aware of is that there've been a couple things that are going to affect the grand list. And the grand list is likely to be flat, hopefully not actually decreasing. There's not a ton of residential development in the town. There's a state law that exempts a series of disabled seniors in the cost of their homes, so a bunch of that will come off the tax rolls. And then the state has revamped the way motor vehicles are evaluated to basically an MSRP plus a depreciation schedule. It looks like that's going to decrease our motor vehicle grand list, but until we get the actual list from the state, we don't really know. So for the first time in a while, most years we have a couple percent between a 1.5% and 2.5% cushion where we can increase our total budget by 2.5% and keep the mill rate flat. Right now, any increase in our budget is likely to make the mill rate go up. If you look at it historically, anytime the mill rate goes up more than 3%, roughly, the town has a problem. So we are gonna face some headwinds overall. That's it, unless you got.
What about the veterans exemption?
What about it?
How much is that gonna impact the town?
We don't know. And we won't even know when the budget is passed, because the law allows you to, even 6 months after the budget cycle is started, to present your paperwork and be given the credit that's retroactive. So it is something that the legislature has been asked to readdress, because what the intention of the law and in the actual language are two very different things. And the projection that the state legislature had for what the actual cost to municipalities was off about fourfold. So it's impacting towns a lot more than the state assured the towns it would when they were thinking about this as a hypothetical.
So I can plan on no property tax next year.
Yeah, is it an exemption or reduction?
You're not disabled yet.
Oh, well,
You walk the link every day. I'll report you.
Did you lose a pinky?
Any other questions for Eric?
Yeah, the projected new business that's coming into town, is that gonna have a good effect? Hopefully.
And what business?
Are we talking about the restaurant?
The restaurant? Yes,
well,
the restaurant.
Chinese restaurant?
that's pretty minimal,
I was gonna say, yeah.
because the building is already taxed. So you're really just getting an additional tax on the personal property that is owned by the business, so that's gonna be fairly minimal.
Minimal.
We'll get a little bit because some of the cell towers have upgraded antennas and stuff like that, so we'll see a little bit of an increase for that. But again, not big. There's no other real commercial development that I know of. And yeah, and we've taken, yeah, we'll leave it at that. I wanna say something, but I won't.
Eric, when you spoke on the grand list, so that takes into account homes that have sold, increased value, and also the deduction that you talked about with the disabled or the elderly.
Correct.
It's gonna net out, you're thinking?
Yeah, I think the grand list is likely to decrease or be flat. Yeah. Because
Well, we have to wait for reval.
Right, the evaluation,
See that every year.
the fact that houses are worth more this year than they were last year doesn't matter.
Yep.
We reval on a 5-year schedule, so 2026, you'll see the next reval when the assessments will change. Yeah, other than things that
That's
go
gonna be
through.
a scary
the
year.
board of-
Yeah,
Go
not
in. I
exactly
know.
that year.
The way prices are going up, it's a good thing. For your nesting, but
Not a
yeah,
good fair.
Yeah, let's,
no, that's good.
any other questions for Eric?
I have a good question. Still 3 school buses or 4? Do we know yet?
If the increase with the number of kids stays just with the preschool, we'll be able to stay with 3. If the new enrollment of students is K, because they don't take the bus. If they're K to 6, then we would have to do 4. So,
When will we know whether we're budgeting for 4?
we will keep. Well, that thing is, like, we kept 4 in this year, not knowing. But I'm glad we did, because then we wound up with transportation that was special for multiple students with the van that we have through the town. We wouldn't have been able to fund that otherwise.
Right, but
So-
what we didn't do is what I need to know is how much I need to account for diesel, because a 4th bus jumps that fairly.
So
considerably.
for right now, I would say keep it where it is for diesel, because if we keep our number where it is right now, in terms of the bus, that it will accommodate those 2 other runs that we have with the other students in the town vehicle. And it's, you have that number. It's the same diesel we use this year with our current. So I would keep it where it is, Eric.
Well, the number we used this year and last year. Well, yeah.
Because remember, the contract that we have with you guys now for those additional students that we use the town vehicle for wasn't in the budget.
Right,
So it's coming out of that line. Where
Well,
that additional 4th bus that I'm not currently using is.
That's on your side.
but that's on your
He's
side. What
asking
I'm
about
saying
the
is,
diesel cost.
we're using,
So, they get charged the diesel, they send us a bill, keep that where it is now with the same number of gallons of use.
But we charge you what you use.
right,
That's what he's trying to get to.
Yeah, keep
what,
us exactly where we are right now. Do not plan for additional bus.
okay,
So I'd like to move on to the Board of Finance section here, and Joanne, are you talking to
Yeah,
that?
I mean, we wanted to just have this meeting be an overview of things. We know that we're gonna get into the nuts and bolts of the budgeting and the expectations as we go along. That's why I wanted to talk to, about the charter changes and everything as far as timelines. I'm thinking, I don't know if my fellow board members agree, but we have a December meeting coming up. I think we're probably gonna take some input to those of us that are present here. We'll have to share, Kim
Tonight.
is there, yeah, and probably maybe send out a memo or an email. I don't think, we're probably just the timelines and things that we discussed with Eric at our last meeting as well, as to when we want to have them presented or, talk about the major factors. So I think we're in good shape. I don't think it's really, I know the spending targets was on here. We've already been told that the budgets are rising. So it's probably unfair at this point to say, try to keep it to 2 or 3%. We're probably just gonna have to do a lot of work when we're in those budget meetings.
We had that
You know.
discussion at our last meeting, we just
Mhm.
felt it wasn't appropriate for us to come up with a number coming into this meeting without hearing everything that, the Board of Ed told us, what
Right.
Eric's just told us.
Mhm.
We just want to reserve the right to discuss that at our next meeting with information rather than just taking a stab in it. So that's kind of where we left it.
I think we made
I
the
think
right
December-
decision, yeah.
Yeah. We'll make it for that target.
Yeah, so a little premature to do the expectations, but we certainly will get them out to everyone, and then we're gonna have to come up with. I think we'll have a joint meeting, Eric, you said, with the Board of Selectmen, I believe, at some point. And I know there were dates.
I think there were 7 joint meetings out there.
so.
7? No,
Hopefully,
way
yeah.
the charter-
Just saying no.
Sit down. One or two.
The way that-
No, I think all we need to have is one for the charter, right?
Well, Eric,
And this could suffice.
Could suffice.
I thought there was more plans.
Make a motion.
I thought that we were told at our last
I make a
meeting,
motion.
might be quite a few.
Many more meetings. created more jointly.
That's what I thought the charter revision.
We did.
Per the charter, we're supposed to have one initial meeting prior to October 15th
Well, we knew we couldn't do
to
that.
lay out budget priorities. Obviously, that's not gonna happen.
Mhm.
Not for this current year. At that, what the charter says is, quote, "The Board of Finance may suggest target expenditures for general government and Board of Education, but it is not binding. Initial discussion of capital projects for upcoming year." So in my mind, that means that me as the town will have had to have presented the updated capital plans to CIP prior to, that meeting in October. That way it could go, at that point, we have an initial, essentially town capital plan, which is pretty early. I am anticipating that February 3rd, I will have a fully fleshed out draft budget workbook available for the town general budget and the capital budget for the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen review. And how you want to do joint meetings, when you want to start them, that is up to you. The charter says in the month of March, there will be joint meetings between the Board of Finance and Board of It.
It'll be March, I think, right?
Yeah.
That's what we usually do, is like just
So we
a
always.
bunch of them in a row and just like,
Okay.
once we have a chance to, if you give it to us on February 3rd or whatever, when we have a chance to review it and then.
Well, the way it's worked, or it should work now that we have a town administrator. Derek prepares the budget. We tell him, he gives it to us preliminary, we tell him if there's things that we want him to add or subtract.
Yeah.
And then it goes to the Board of Finance and gets picked apart.
Ah.
I mean, no, it's honest, it's
Yeah.
true, that's what happens. I mean, like last year, I mean, it's not a negative, it's just how it is. It's the process, I mean, and
Right.
once it gets past us,
Right,
it
comes to us for
comes to you
review.
for review, and
Right.
and what you decide and what the Board of Finance votes goes to the town meeting.
Yeah.
So can I ask for the capital stuff for the school that we briefly touched on? You want something in writing? I understand you guys want that as soon as possible. When do you need that by?
I think.
Well,
Well,
we're
that's
supposed to
what
have.
they decided
Just
by
gave us that,
the,
right?
by,
By
Oh.
February 3rd.
oh, maybe it
No,
goes.
no, it should, what she was asking was, should have been, once you have your 5-year capital plan, you would update it for every October.
Right,
I understand that. We're not there right now. Our plan for this year until June was to
The
have a
background,
5-year
the
plan.
background, just get us the quote,
Get us
what you
the-
want to sit there and do it, and then we're gonna sit there and wrap that into the capital plan and the budget that's presented back to the.
Okay.
you're in
Get
plenty
that
of time for this year because
Yeah,
we
that's what,
haven't
but I'm
even,
just asking.
right,
Yeah.
of course.
It's
we
just a
haven't even
quote,
set our
just a quote on the project.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for the finance? I'm gonna move on to correspondence. I'm not aware of any. Anybody have correspondence for tonight? In that case, I thought we had somebody from the public, but they went away. Anybody,
Oh, she's on the Board of Ed.
oh, okay, so we have no
Yeah.
public.
She
Okay.
She logged off.
Before we talk about adjournment, I'd just like to say, I think this meeting was productive. And I think that when we had this capital plan, if anybody sees that it's got something other than bathrooms, elevators and driveways from the school, we should say, well, where'd that come from, and try to find out, because Celeste was pretty clear that's what she was looking for there. Same thing with the town.
I hope they put more than those 3 things on there. Because
That's for
it's all
next
fall
year.
land, it's like, it's got to be funded.
Right.
So it's things that the Board of Education is seeing within the building that need to be repaired, so if you
I think-
only come with those 3 things.
For right
Well,
now.
Give
for
us your
right now.
wish list, right?
We
And
gotta
so
have
we start planning.
You're only gonna be able to fund one thing.
Now.
So,
You're right.
We gotta start thinking about those long-term projects.
We can get through this year's budget with the
Right.
information we know right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
there we go.
Yes.
And then they already are working, they said that's part of their, yeah, their goal is this year to work on it. And they are.
And to use another Stephen Covey quote, kind of like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You know, seek first to understand and then be understood. Everybody here, I think, is doing a great job, trying to do their stuff. And we sometimes, we don't listen to the other person to try and understand enough what they're coming from. And I always find that very helpful, and I learn a lot that way, so I would suggest that. And I appreciate the opportunity to get together with you all tonight, hear what's going on with you.
Good job, good job.
Thank you very much.
Ending question, and I know this was brought up when we had this meeting last year. And I had suggested / recommended, I think that this type of meeting should happen more than once a year. I don't know what other people's thoughts and feelings are on that. I know last year we talked about it and then
Well, life gets busy.
it didn't happen.
Everyone
It
has
does, it gets
multiple
busy for all of
meetings
us.
and
We should.
I don't think it was intentional.
Maybe we should have a cocktail. party.
Exactly, exactly, I am 100% with you.
Take turns.
Sit there. No, we should let them know, we need to understand. We're not done, we haven't adjourned.
Yeah.
And I will say this to the public, it doesn't matter, we need to understand each other as people
Yes,
and understand
yes.
what we're all dealing with.
Exactly.
And, it's a lot easier, if I know you and I understand you and you can come talk to me, I'm all for it. I see Eric on my walks, he's the guy I see, I know, he takes his kids and rides the bike to school.
Not in winter.
Baby.
My Yorkie.
I do, I mean, it's how it is, and Jed walks all the time and usually he brings rain, but it's better
We
than
gotta
we do
get started
things.
now at the holiday.
Yeah.
Not all things.
To look, like to plan for a meeting of some kind in the spring.
I think
After you're done with the
I think
budget,
2 years.
Yeah,
with all the other
definitely
meetings
after
we
budget.
have.
yeah, that'll be June or something. but-
Good
As
idea.
long as Jed is the moderator, we're good.
Yeah.
Good.
All right.
And with that, I'm looking for motion to adjourn. Bill, okay, okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much, everybody.